Welcome. Welcome back to Stemming the Gap, where we try to bridge the gap between the majority and minority through productive conversation in STEM fields.
Mm-hmm.
And we're back, baby.
Yeah, we're back. It's been a long time since we've had our last
Yep.
episode. We've had some technical issues. We've
With our streaming platform.
we've
Oh my god.
streaming platforms.
You guys don't know how many times I've gone, into the setup and with the intention to record, and then
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's just like we will get to recording, and then all of a sudden it just shuts off and all that
Yep.
all that stuff, as well as the XLR cables and stuff. It was a mess, dude.
Right.
And-
But now we have it figured out.
Yeah.
We're back every other Friday. We're recording.
Yeah, and also
I'll have a new video for you guys.
yeah,
So
also the AP. We just had an AP test.
yep. We've been
Med
busy.
studying and stuff.
We've been back, but now we're ready. We're putting our effort into this
Yeah.
podcast. We're back to give it all. And today we have something interesting because we do interviews with a lot of people on this podcast.
And we really talk about like other stuff in STEM,
Mhm.
and we don't really necessarily talk about ourselves too
Exactly.
much. Besides, I know you guys watched the intro episode, but the intro episode, I feel like
we kind of did a little bit of everything.
it was a little bit of everything. It was
Yeah.
too like shallow. And honestly, as guests, I want you guys to really know us on a personal level,
Mhm.
so that you're able to deeper connect with the thoughts and the ideas that we have that we want to promote. So
Exactly. So what we're doing today is we're gonna do kind of like an interview with each other, basically. So we're gonna have questions that we're both gonna answer, and then we're gonna have more personalized questions that I'm directing towards Winston, and Winston will have more personalized questions
Yep.
that he's directing towards me. And we kind of want to inspire you guys to become involved in STEM, and those facing barriers towards it through sharing our story. And obviously, we by no means made any revolutionary discoveries, but
Yeah.
We're in STEM. We kind of want to spread the idea of minority participation in STEM. So, we're kind of making this in a cohesive episode of our experiences and
It's
our
like
goals. So
it's a really like well thought out Q&A essentially, but it's like
Yep.
And essentially this is technically an interview with each other,
exactly.
even though like technically speaking, me and Gavin are really close,
Mhm.
right? We've been friends for 2 years now,
Yep.
and and despite us knowing a lot about each other and probably knowing the answers to these questions,
Mhm.
we want you guys to know. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But even then, maybe I could learn a little more about Gavin.
Exactly. So, first question that we're gonna ask each other is, what is your most memorable experience in STEM? So, we're gonna start off with that.
Honestly, bro, you can go first.
I can go first?
Go
Okay.
first.
So, most memorable experience, probably when I think just kind of discovering STEM in a way that I kind of didn't really expect. Like the way I got into science was like kind of, it was like, I liked science class in school, but it was never really something I kind of considered for a career.
Yeah, I definitely agree with
And
that.
this may seem like something a little bit shallow, but this is kind of what started me off. Is one Christmas I got a periodic table of elements book.
Wow.
I was enthralled with it. Like I
Yeah.
loved everything about the elements, learning about chemistry, and that's kind of what got me started in exploration that I'm doing today. So
Yeah.
that was definitely something that was memorable for me and getting me interested in thinking about it as a career. Yeah.
For me personally, I felt that, one memorable experience that I had with STEM was like the intro sort of. I can't relate with Gavin. I never really liked
Mhm.
science as a kid, or like anything of that matter. I didn't really like the stuff that I was learning and stuff. I didn't really care much about space or whatnot.
Mhm.
But what interests me was like definitely city life, urban design, all
Mhm.
that stuff.
Yeah.
And like it really interests me. I thought it was really cool. I wanted to live in like an urban area, but
Mhm.
I just wanted to know what makes a city a city.
Yeah.
And I remember talking about it with my mom at like a pretty young age. Like,
Uh-huh.
what makes a city, mom? And she listed all the basics. There's buildings, there's bridges, and
Mhm.
I always wondered, what can I do to make a city,
Mhm.
right? And that comes with this, and that then I asked her, I was like, what could I do? I
Right.
really asked that, and I was like,
Yeah.
and she was like, there's an engineering, right? I'm
Mhm.
like, really? What's that? I didn't know. That's a big word, right?
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you think big words, it means you're smart, right? So essentially I thought engineering was like this big multi-million-dollar thing. Like I didn't
Yeah.
think it was as simple as creating your own design and
Yeah.
really faltering with it. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And so next question for both of us is, what are your future goals? What are the goals in the future with STEM? And I don't know if you want to start off with that one.
Goals,
Goals in the future of STEM. So what you plan to do beyond where we are now, which is high school, obviously. So
definitely like I don't want to be like too cliche, but I want to invent something. Like
hmm
I want to create something that's my own
yeah.
that I can be patent approved and
hmm
to be used revolutionary, like to be used industrially and stuff. I
Yeah.
feel like if you wake up, right, I tell myself every day, like I'd much rather have something to be known,
hmm
but then I'd be dead,
Yeah.
than rather being rich and alive but no one knew me. You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
I feel like everybody says
That's
that.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Yeah.
imagine if you woke up, right? People are using something you invented
Yeah.
every day. That'd be amazing,
That
right?
would be
And
amazing.
I feel like
Yeah.
engineering has to play a big part of that. And
hmm
I don't just want to be known as an inventor. I want to you know, be an engineer in a
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
definitely. So for me, future goals with STEM, something similar to Winston, I want to be able to just kind of to innovate in my space. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
obviously I would start out, I'd go to college, get my degrees, whatever,
Yeah. Do the
what I need to
basics, of
do
course.
for
Yeah.
biochemistry, which is the field I'm interested in
Mm.
going in, maybe start in a lab, but then I'd also wouldn't want to just work in a lab for somebody else. I'm kind of interested maybe in starting my own lab,
Exactly.
starting a biofoundry or some sort of research facility lab type of thing
Yeah.
where I'm
Exactly.
creating things that revolutionize the space. I'm not just
Yeah.
doing it for somebody else. I'm not following set
Yeah.
instructions. I want to be able to just kind of step outside the box a little bit and be able to, like you said,
Yeah.
create something and innovate in that
Yeah.
space. So
I would definitely be interested in like creating my own engineering firm for sure. Like
yeah.
being able to surround yourself with, I think that was one thing I wanted to do in my life
Mhm.
was to surround myself with smart people.
Yeah.
That's why originally, like, when I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer because I
Mhm.
felt like everyone in the courtroom is geniuses, bro. Like
Yeah. I mean, they are smart.
yeah, I
So
watched Suits and stuff. I was teen, bro. Like
yeah.
I wanted to surround myself with smart people to
Mhm.
uplift and enlighten my ideas so that
Yeah.
I could truly know more about the world in general. Because
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like that's a big dream and goal of mine
Mhm.
of like wanting to learn.
Right.
Being able to know everything, and obviously I can't know everything, but like
Mhm.
being able to have a general background about everything that's around me makes you
Right.
more aware, right?
Yeah. Definitely makes sense. Next question I kind of want us to ask each other is, because we talk about stemming the gap
Yeah.
between minor STEM fields. When did you see an example of the gap that we talk about for minorities in STEM fields, and higher education, that sort of thing?
You
And
go
I can,
first. Yeah,
yeah, I can
you
start
go
off.
first.
So, for me, recently this April break,
Uh-huh.
I went to San Francisco on
Yeah.
vacation, and while I was there, I decided to take a tour of UC Berkeley,
Wow.
which obviously, it's a college for, all sorts of different fields, but it's really known for, its chemistry, its
Yeah.
science, its STEM programs, and a lot of people go there for that
Yeah.
reason. And when I went there, I kid you not, like I was, focused on the tour,
Yeah.
looking at all the different things that were there.
Yeah.
But at the end, I kind of realized, I was like, I saw like two black people in
Yeah.
like the entire tour. Everybody else was
And
white
honestly,
and a few Asian people.
I don't think that's a coincidence. Like I feel like it's
Exactly.
just that I've met okay, like obviously like different areas and different,
hmm
in the world or
Yeah.
like in America are obviously going to be populated with different percentages of people.
hmm
But California is an area with, it's considered a melting pot, right?
Exactly.
Where every ethnicity that I know has at least one person living in, California.
hmm
I'm not making that assumption, but you know, it's like
Exactly.
just an estimate.
Yeah, and you see that melting pot, but then when you get
But
to
then when
like
you get to the actual,
the
yeah,
higher levels and
exactly,
you don't see them. Like
yeah,
everybody there was white. I mean, there are a few Asians, but like it's just it just wasn't in any way diverse. I don't, I'm not saying that to
yeah,
shame the college, but that's just a trend that you see everywhere.
yeah.
That's just the facts. It's the truth. And so that's kind of when I saw an example. You see an example of the gap that we talk about for minorities in some fields.
I think I saw like I looked at like I was really interested in like research in a sense, right?
Mhm.
I think my dad had me do these projects when I was little where I would research about a topic that I was interested in.
Mm.
And for me, one of these projects were like I think it was about like um it was not necessarily engineers, but it was
Hmm.
more like these architects,
Yeah.
right? And I researched about a project that was in, I believe in like somewhere Albany, I think.
Hmm.
It was a big, really big building that they did, and it was a whole campus. It was really
Yeah.
nice, and I just wanted to learn more about it, and what, the dimensions and stuff, the measurements and stuff. Who was the team that worked with?
Hmm.
Um, and I remember there was a team's list of
Yeah.
people who actually worked on it, and it was just names, not really photos. And
Hmm.
what I ended up doing was researching like every single architect. Like I really wanted to know, like, who are these people? What are they building? What are they majoring? What are they wants to do in their life? Like, how old are they?
Yeah.
How experienced are they?
Yeah.
What college did they go to? At the time, I really considered colleges great.
Hmm.
I thought that if you went to Harvard, you were like big boss. You were a genius. And
Yeah.
some people went to Northeastern, did not know what Northeastern was.
Hmm.
But I noticed like a lot of these people, like generally speaking, like you said, were white.
Exactly. Yep.
Maybe in New York, Albany is an area where I do see a lot of diversity there, right?
Hmm.
But still, I don't think I ever saw like a minority there.
Exactly. Like,
And it
it's
was just
just
all, you know,
it is
white people,
it is really
Caucasians.
appalling. Like, as I said
Exactly.
with UC Berkeley and all that, like in the areas that they're located, it's like,
Yeah.
diversity, and then in those areas, those
Yeah.
exclusive areas, it's non-existent, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate, but
Exactly.
it's the reality that, we kind of want to make aware to you guys that these things are existing and these
And
gaps exist.
I'm not saying that like architecture is a Caucasian dominant,
Yeah, they're
field. It's there's Your dad is literally African American,
exactly. He's
or
Jamaican.
Ja-
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
black.
Hmm.
And but I think that, and I tried doing even more research, right?
Hmm.
And I think I rarely saw any minorities. Maybe I keep researching projects. I
Hmm.
kept doing a research project like my dad did. And I kept finding like, white people, white person after white person, and maybe
Yeah.
I'll come across an Asian. I'll look
Hmm.
more into the Asian, just and for my own
To see, to envision yourself,
exactly
to
my
see where
own
you can be.
bias, right?
Right.
As an Asian American living in America,
Uh-huh.
um, and it puzzled me. It really did,
Yeah.
and that was my first experience with the gap.
Yeah.
And
And
at the time, I didn't really notice it, but it was just like from now, it was back then it was an observation, but now it's really something major that we have to
yeah,
address.
but don't forget the fact that there are still some that are
Yeah,
paving
for
the way,
sure.
that are there, and that kind of segues into my thing, those who are trailblazers. We obviously have more trailblazers coming
Yeah,
up in our generation. I kind of want to, what advice, would you give to teen minorities who are interested in pursuing a career in STEM?
I think one piece of advice that I had was definitely trying to get more information as you grow.
Hmm.
Right. I remember as a kid, I didn't really have a lot of resources that I could go to.
Hmm.
I definitely went to like stuff like idea camps and stuff. I had the resources. It's just like I wish I knew about that sooner.
Right.
Because I feel like the more I'm not necessarily behind it all. I actually am not behind it all. I have
Hmm.
everything lined up. I
Hmm.
know what I want to do. I know what college I want to go to.
Hmm.
What I want to do after high school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I would say I'm pretty ahead of the curve,
Hmm.
but I would definitely I wouldn't necessarily say plan,
Hmm.
but I'm saying like get to know what your field is,
Yeah.
right? Because some people won't even know what they really want to do, and being
Exactly.
able to actually explore that, see what you're interested in,
Mhm.
and down the line, of course, that's gonna change, right?
Yeah.
I never knew I was gonna do engineer. I wanted to do engineering like until like maybe a year ago, right? And I don't
Yeah.
even know if I'm doing engineering 100%. That
Mhm.
might change down the line when
But
I'm
at
a
least you
senior.
have an idea. You have
Exactly.
something that
I
you
do.
can
I do definitely
pursue.
want to do something in STEM. Of course,
Exactly.
this podcast, right?
Yeah.
But I will get to want to get to know your stuff
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah. And then for me, I think major piece of advice I have is for people to be hungry. Like,
Yeah,
I think part of it, is that,
that kind of
like you
plays
said,
in.
resources is a major disadvantage. So, whether you have resources or not, you have to be hungry for knowledge. Like, you
Yeah,
have to be hungry to,
you're gonna have to want it. Yeah,
learn more, to go to the college that you want to go to get the job or whatever, kind of get your goals. All the trailblazers that we talk about, in this podcast, they all were hungry to create, hungry to break the mold. As we were saying, oh, in colleges, it's not diverse, which is true, but that by no means means that you guys can't get involved and you guys can't pursue a career. You just have to be hungry. You have to want it. And you have to be willing to learn more and assimilate that knowledge. Yeah,
I think that's pretty good advice, but honestly, I wouldn't be as hungry. I can't explain it, but in a sense where earlier, being hungry, you guys don't want to get locked up in a STEM like that. You don't want to make STEM your only thing because again, you are just children. Like, I would definitely explore. Don't just because of this podcast. I don't want it to make sure that STEM is the best. STEM is everything.
Right.
There are tons of liberal arts, programs and careers that you have gone through that make the same amount of STEM, but and are more and if not the same or if not more enjoyable than
and
STEM.
What we're trying to do is not because obviously STEM isn't everything.
Exactly.
STEM doesn't run the world, but what we're trying to do is because we see the gap that exists, we're trying to bring a little bit of more awareness
because
to it.
because we are interested in STEM.
Exactly.
But
and it doesn't have to be your everything.
Yeah. But
so
I would say to add on to a little bit what Gavin said, like don't be hungry just for STEM. Like because of us. I want you
for knowledge.
Be hungry for knowledge in general. Like being able to know everything and wanting to consume that knowledge. And another thing, take advantage of like school. I don't want to be like people who are watching this are primarily in the US, right? When meaning education is free from K to 12 meaning. So and a lot of people in other countries would I'm not saying we're kind of privileged in a sense. We have the resources.
The US, we're very privileged.
We have free education and opportunities that it doesn't come with, and it takes like some skill to do right.
Exactly.
And being able to get into a really good college from free education, it's an opportunity that people really have to grasp. Right there, I know you guys wake up and you're like, damn, I really don't want to go to school, or dang, I really don't like. I want to push it aside. You got to realize that this education, like, it's really important. A lot of people don't get it in the world. We are a small percentage that really do get it for free, and we have to take that grasp of opportunity. Like, people don't really realize that enough. But so I also want to say, so use that hunger towards your education and knowing everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and now we can kind of move on to more personalized questions. I'll ask you a question. You ask me a question.
Let's face each other.
Yeah. And so the first question I wanted to ask you was, so what kind of jumped out to you about doing this podcast with me in the first place? Like,
okay.
Like what?
That's a good question.
What was this? Because we know obviously you joined me in doing this, but like, what was your first thought? Like, what really jumped out to you in making you do this?
For me, I was so interested in STEM as well. The engineering thing, guys. I feel like that nobody really knew about that as much as I wanted to. When I told people what I wanted to do as a career, I definitely said engineer, but no one really essentially grasped of what I really wanted to do, because I knew a lot about it and I wanted to say something, but no one really took the time to really say what I wanted to do.
Right.
Get my voice out there. Right. And you is a good friend of mine, damn near my best friend.
Yep.
And imagine, doing like talking and making conversation about something you're so interested in with your best friend in an environment where you're causing change in society based on you speaking your word with your best friend.
Right.
Correct. Like it's all the right things in the right place to create, a sense of, voice and putting yourself out there and to do it with someone that I really enjoy being with.
Appreciate
it's
that,
perfect.
Man. It's been a good time so far.
Yes,
I hope
sir.
you guys have enjoyed it. But
no beef.
Yeah, it's been a good time. So,
I mean, what about for you? Like, honestly, I feel like I jumped on the wagon a little bit. Like, this was supposed to be a solo thing for you, but honestly, I kept begging and begging. Like, why did you let me in?
So, see, initially I wanted it to be just myself talking about it because, obviously this was my idea.
Yeah.
And then I kind of realized I think it'd be really good to have, because I've never done anything like this before. Podcast, video, YouTube, anything like that. So I was like, I kind of wanted to do it on my own. But then I was like, obviously, it'd be good to have someone to split the work with, but also someone to kind of bounce ideas off of,
Exactly.
to help generate ideas.
You know how
It's-
boring a single podcast is?
It can
You know
be
what I mean?
boring, and this is, this is a lot more exciting because I
Yeah.
have, if I run out of words, you're there to talk to
Exactly.
me,
I feel that.
and we could just have a conversation. It's not just me yapping into a microphone.
Yeah.
And I kind of, I was reluctant at first, and I realized it'd just be so much better to
Yeah.
have you on the podcast, to have your perspective on the
Yeah.
podcast, and it's been really good.
Yeah.
So I'm
'Cause I
glad I made
think
that decision.
One thing that I think separates us and makes us a good team was
Mhm.
how differently we think.
Yeah.
I feel like you're more of a logical approach, but I feel like mine is a lot more, you know, through it. I can't. What's the opposite of
Like
logical?
subjective?
Exactly, in
Yeah.
a sense where, I'm doing things more hands on
Mhm.
and such, where you're thinking more, you're taking a step back and really assessing what really things are,
Right.
rather than just diving through it without a thought.
Exactly. And I think that helps because, again, like I said, we can bounce ideas off
Exactly.
each other, and it kind of brings alternate perspectives to the table.
And what's crazy is that like our careers are two different paths and two different methods of working.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's under the same big category of STEM.
Mhm.
It just shows how much like inclusive STEM is in a sense.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so now back to me. Quite another question I want to ask you is kind of what's like a trait or like a quality that you have that you feel like helps you, succeed, or something that's, become a part of your journey in STEM.
I think one thing that I was really good at, as even now with history and working with English and stuff like that, like before I did STEM and I got into science and engineering and stuff, I was a English kid.
Mhm.
I love doing history and English. I thought writing was something that I was gonna take my career with. I wanted to be an author at one point.
Right.
And my play around word was strong. I
Mhm.
could make up a story in 5 seconds and all that stuff. And I really thought that something like that would work, because one of
Mhm.
the skills that I had was to make inferences, to draw conclusions. And I felt that making these inferences based on analysis, I was
Mhm.
really good at analysis. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like I was ahead of the game. I remember being my MCAT score being really high for English.
Mhm.
And I love that.
Yeah.
But I noticed that it wasn't really my analysis or my inferences that made me special.
Mhm.
It was my idea of critical thinking
Mhm.
and my use of being able to really, take a step back and really assess what things are and draw and what everything is and what every little piece is to
Right.
how that affects that bigger product. That's just what helped me. And as well,
Yeah.
another thing was um my public speaking and
Mhm.
you know like social skills and all that stuff. Also being a leader,
Mhm.
right? I thought
Yep.
it was easy for me. I'm an extrovert. I don't know
Right.
if you knew,
Yeah.
but it was easy for me to grasp and take a team to lead, right?
Mhm.
Being able to command and making everything in charge. I found that to come easy. I
Right.
never really was scared to talk about things that I felt. I would always give open criticism. You need that for engineering.
Yeah, definitely. Makes sense. Like, again, like you said, that critical thinking is really important. Like
Yeah,
it,
I feel
it
like
applies to all
yeah.
areas, but it definitely really helps you in STEM to be able to
Honestly,
synthesize and
I don't know
create.
if you know, guys. Gavin's a great critical thinker. I know, like, I feel like for your field of work, critical thinking works too. Like,
Mhm.
you know how I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I feel like you have some special skill that's not critical thinking. Do you know what
Mhm.
that is?
I think for me, it's kind of like, like this is gonna be a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but I think something that's really helped me is my curiosity. Like, I really like just learning new things kind of in general. Like, I really enjoy, you know, like I said, with the first chemistry book I got, I
Yeah.
delved into it. Sometimes I'll get stuck in rabbit holes of just, reading different things,
Yeah.
watching videos on that stuff. And, like I said, like being hungry to want to learn more.
Curiosity.
Curiosity, I think, is something that's really helped me and gain knowledge, because I actually want to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
Some subjects like, English is really my favorite subject.
Yeah.
I'll learn or whatever,
See
but
how we're
I'm
like opposite people?
yeah, but for science, I'm hungry for it.
Yeah.
Like I want to learn it, and I think that's definitely something that's helped me learn more, and I think will definitely carry me through my further pursuits for sure. So
All right.
And
That's
then
cool. I'm not gonna lie. I
yeah,
didn't know you were not a history, like a English guy like that.
yeah, it's just I don't
Because I
know,
feel like
man.
when I see your like essays and stuff, and they're all pretty good. Like,
Yeah, they're pretty. I mean, it's like not to say that I'm not horrible at English, but I'm just like I'm good at English, but then I'm great at
yeah,
science.
yeah, I feel
So
that.
um, that's definitely better. And then when you just asked me a question. One question I want to ask to you is, what is something in STEM that you struggled with? I feel like we talk about all our good qualities. Now I feel like we kind of have to expose a little bit of our struggles. Kind of relate in that way.
I think one struggle that I had was like being able to find people with the same hunger that I had to
Mhm.
learn more. And because I went to in the place that the elementary school that I went to, I never people really like a lot of people like big procrastinators, like
Mhm.
never a lot of them slacked. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I was like necessarily a bad kid. I had all A's. I mean, it's elementary school, fortunately, all A's. Like, but
Yeah.
I was definitely a bright student and honor roll every quarter and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But then, and it was hard to really express like yourself and fit in.
Mhm.
Like, I felt that it was holding. I don't think that it was something in STEM,
Mhm.
but something that was holding me back to explore more
Mhm.
and
Just
elaborate
kind of
my
your
ideas.
environment, really,
Exactly, it
what it
was
was.
definitely my environment as a kid.
Yeah.
I had people like holding me back. I got ridiculed and bullied a lot.
Mhm.
I was chubbier and a little on the bigger side.
Yeah.
I was that big fat nerd.
Mhm.
In that area, and I didn't really feel comfortable.
Mhm.
Expressing what I was interested in was at the time was about science and STEM.
Mhm.
I really just felt like I was gonna get laughed at, and you know, kind of just going home and learning about other stuff, but not able to being able to talk about it, and just people brushing it past
Mhm.
because of an image that they drew for themselves.
Right.
It didn't allow me to shine the way I wanted to. For
Right.
sure. What about you?
For me, I think something I've struggled with. It's interesting because I mentioned like I have curiosity
Yeah.
earlier, and I really want to explore more in that area. Kind of what I've struggled with is like when I want to learn something, like I'll be focused on learning it, and I'm able to zone in on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can be a detriment to me. Like I will get stuck on something and I'll be like, no, like I can't, be stuck on this. Like this should, be able to come easy to me when it doesn't. Like I face struggles
Yeah.
in science, something in math and so on. And what'll happen is I'll get stuck trying the same thing over and over, trying to solve the problem or figure out what the issue is with why I can't figure this
Yeah.
out. And I feel like I kind of just need to take a step back,
Yeah.
because STEM is hard. If any of you listening decide to go into STEM, there will be difficulties, and sometimes you'll get stuck on that, and I'll be like, I should be able to know this, I should be able to do that, and just kind of my berating myself to just go a little bit too far gone is kind
Yeah.
of something that I struggle with a little bit, and so I kind of have to dial myself
Yeah.
back, take a step back, figure out, you're gonna be okay. Just you're gonna learn it. Take your time. It's gonna be difficult. Just kind of
Yeah.
impatience because I want to learn more. I'm like, why am I not learning
Yeah.
this? And so that's kind of something I've struggled with, but I'm getting better at it. And so it's improving.
Yes,
So
STEM is definitely hard. Like I feel like
mhm,
frustration is definitely one of the things. Like the cons, I think
mhm,
obviously like hunger, your hunger and your drive for knowledge. I feel like that was one of the bigger pros and cons that's one of the cons actually.
mhm,
Not being frustrated and if not one of your method works. I think that's why like the drive, like your drive for education, that's what something that's holding you back, right?
mhm. Yeah.
I necessarily I had that same, kind of experience too. Like I felt like honestly, like, I'd be really frustrated once something that I knew was gonna work and it didn't work because I didn't necessarily know the method at the time.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. So I think
What are some of the like key takeaways that we really had today?
so. Obviously, I've learned a little bit about you
Yeah.
and your strengths. And I think something I've kind of taken away is that we all have different experiences in this journey of kind of just learning in general. It doesn't have to be STEM. We all have different experiences, and we all have our different strengths and weaknesses, but I feel like we kind of need to learn to embrace them. Your weaknesses, your strengths, everyone's gonna have them. You have to embrace them and kind of use that to pursue, whether it be STEM or whether it be something else. Kind of take that, because we're learning about ourselves, and obviously there are plenty more people. Nobody's the same. Plenty more people who have their own different traits that give them the abilities. Like you have, certain traits like your critical thinking, whatever. You're able to infer, and my curiosity. I'm able to get deep into something. Somebody may have, another significant ability that they're able to do that helps them pursue into something. And I think that's definitely something that should be celebrated. Diversity in skin color, but also in thought. And I think the way in which you pursue something, and I've definitely learned that from you, and the differences in how we think, and
definitely,
we're able to celebrate that.
I think definitely personal experience and what people went through, and how people think definitely shape their own identity, and how their life and how their job want to go through, how they want to go through with it. In a sense, I think that's what makes humans so like magnificent, or like more interesting, at least.
Definitely.
Everybody has a different story, and watching everybody have the same different stories but having the same outcome of having a successful life is amazing to watch.
Definitely, for sure. So I think it's a really good conversation I had with you. I hope all of you enjoyed it. Take something away from what we've been talking about today, a little bit about us.
Despite the fact that it's kind of against our mission, like today's episode wasn't necessarily about stemming the gap, or to be cliche, but I wanted you guys to really know us on a personal basis, and how we despite us just being normal high school students with a dream, I think that a lot of the time you guys don't really understand how much and what we think and what we go through as people to get to where we need to be.
Definitely. So thank you all for tuning in today.
I appreciate every one of those views. And
definitely make sure you subscribe, like, comment, comment.
Follow Instagram, listen on
Follow
Spotify.
Instagram at STEMMing the Gap. Spotify. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram.
Yes, sir.
Make sure you follow us. Thank you all for tuning in. See you in the next one.
Signing off.